much for inviting me. I'm really glad to get to know you guys and know the work that you're doing with Fishing Has No Boundaries. And I thought I would come here today first to tell you a little bit about my life story, just so to add another perspective of disability. Everybody has different experiences, so my story is not by any means the only story of disability, but I thought I would share a little, and then I'm going to leave you with three different thoughts to kind of take with you for the rest of the year as you embark on planning all your big events and working with people with disabilities. So I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction. I was born in Duluth, Minnesota. I have 3 siblings, and my parents have been married for as long as I've been around. And so I'm the only person in my family with a disability. It was a spontaneous genetic mutation, so I have brittle bones disease, and so my bones break easier than most people's. I've been pretty lucky, however. Before I was born, like 30 or 50 bones broke in utero, so that's why, and then they healed in utero too, so my arms and legs are both bent, but they don't hurt now, obviously, and they have been like that my entire life. When I was young, my parents were always very supportive, and they said, whatever you want to do, we'll help you find a way to do it. So I've been really lucky that way. And they also let me decide whether or not I wanted to have surgery that would potentially straighten my arms and legs. They said they would leave that up to me, and so when I was about 10, I had kind of already decided that I didn't really want to risk it. There was some chance of losing nerve function in my hands and my feet, and I could do a lot, and you could tell that wheelchairs were only getting better, and I just didn't feel like it was something that I necessarily needed to make my life more full. So I decided not to get the surgery, and they supported that. Also, when I was 10, I started playing the violin. I saw the orchestra come to our school when I was in 4th grade, and I was really taken with the sound of the full orchestra and the stringed instruments, and so I told my parents I wanted to play, and they, of course, being them, said okay. And I know later my mom told me, she was like, oh no, how are we gonna figure this one out? So luckily I met an orchestra teacher. Her name is Susan Sommerfeld. She was the teacher at my elementary school, or my middle school, I mean, and she just kind of took the situation into her own hands and said, let's figure this out. So together we brainstormed a way for me to play. I'm going to be playing for you later today, but I play it up and down like a cello, so it's because I'm too small to play it the normal way, so I play it like a cello, and I just am so grateful every time someone asks me how I got started. I'm so grateful to her, because she easily could have just said, you should probably just do choir, like this is going to be too difficult, but she figured it out with me, and I've been doing it ever since, and now it's my career. So any dreams that people have, I think it's important to think about how it's possible rather than maybe looking for an easier out, because you never know what it's going to lead to next. So my disability obviously has affected my life in some big ways. When I was little, I broke limbs more often than other kids. I think I broke maybe 15 or 16 in my childhood. But I wasn't, gradually as I aged, I got over the feeling of being sad about disability. And again, this is just my experience. But when I was a little kid, every 4 or 5 months, I would get pretty sad that I couldn't walk. But eventually, those feelings just kind of went away, because you just get used to living the way that you live, and I was happy. I had a lot of good friends, and my family was awesome, and it just didn't seem to be a big determining factor in my happiness anymore. So I don't regret or feel bad about the way that my body is, because I am doing a lot of things that I really love to do, and I feel like my life has a lot of meaning, and so that's just kind of where I come from. Everyone's experience is different. I had a whole lifetime to adjust to my disability, and not everybody does, obviously. Sometimes it happens suddenly in younger age or older age, so you have to have compassion for where everybody's at. But for me, it doesn't bother me anymore. When I was about 18, obviously I knew I wanted to go to college, and that was probably the first time where disability became like a really relevant part of my experience, because my parents were obviously pretty nervous to let me go away to school. So I said I didn't want to aid, I didn't want a PCA, a personal care attendant. I just wanted to go do it by myself. And that obviously did not go over well with my parents. So after a long time of like negotiating and arguing and fighting about it, we finally settled on a school in St. Paul that I did go to without any aids. And, you know, in retrospect, we were both right. I am really grateful for the opportunity when I lived all by myself, away from my family. I think that was a really good growing experience for me. But it was also really hard. I had not taken care of myself that much by myself before. And so everything took me a really long time. I think I kind of maybe didn't calculate how long it was going to take to like shower, for example, in the morning. And so I felt like I was always just kind of trying to get along and just like make it through the day kind of feeling. So I had some depression and stuff during college, but in reality, it was still a growing experience. And I guess what I think about a lot is just that we all need the right to make mistakes. You know, it might not have been the wisest choice of me to just go from a very like supported home life to the great unknown by myself, but I learned a lot from it, and I don't regret it. And so I don't know, mistakes are part of everyone's life. So if you think back to when you were 18, did you always make wise choices? Is the question. Nobody does. So it's the same if you have a disability. It's not that you have to always make the right choice. You have to learn from the consequences of your choices. When I was in college, I ended up getting sick. My disability, generally you have a normal lifespan, but one thing is that you do have smaller lung capacity, so I ended up having, or you often do, not always, but in my case I do, I have a lot smaller lungs, so I had a respiratory issue and I got really sick, and so I ended up going to the hospital. The doctor, instead of seeing me as a full person, just said, oh, she's gonna die, we don't know what's wrong with her, instead of doing the normal test that you would do on any able-bodied person. So my mom was really smart. I wasn't really conscious, so I couldn't do much for myself in this situation, but she said, well, I really need a second opinion on that. So she got one, and the doctor was like, well, clearly you tried prednisone. That's what I would do if it was, you know, Joe Brown came in and he had a respiratory issue like this, and she said, no, they haven't done anything. So the doctor prescribed prednisone. I got better 24 hours later. I was fine. And so that was kind of the first indicator for me of like, I feel like a totally functioning normal person, but not everybody will always see me that way. So that was the first time where I realized I had to be an advocate for myself, especially in medical situations. A lot of times you have to understand what people are basing their decisions on and make sure that they're treating you the same as any other patient, because in reality the disability factors in some of the time for health issues, but not all of the time, and it's important to know that the doctors are listening to the whole story. And so that was kind of the biggest first, like, whoa, I gotta be my own advocate in a lot of different realms. And so because of that experience, because it was pretty scary, I ended up moving home because I had a lot of anxiety. And the reason I bring this up to you, because obviously this is personal stuff, is because a lot of times people, even with physical disabilities, where you might not think about mental health issues, have had some pretty scary experiences happen to them, either, you know, becoming disabled or during their disability, like, you know, malpractice in the hospital or whatever, or just health issues that, you know, all of a sudden get out of control. And so those kind of things can be really scary, but they're not the first thing you think of when you think of somebody's barriers. In reality, my anxiety and depression have been a bigger barrier to me in different times of my life than my wheelchair, and nobody thinks to have any questions about that. And so it's just to have compassion for the people you're working with, that you're fishing with. It's not that you have to become their psychologist or dig around and try to find out, but if somebody's seeming kind of reserved or down, I mean, you know, disability affects every area of your life, and it sometimes affects your mental health. So just to be compassionate. I mean, all of us have experienced traumatic things at one point or another. So it's, you know, not surprising that if you have a physical disability, that once in a while something will also happen that affects their mental health. The other thing that I deal with a lot is chronic pain, and so that's the other thing is, everybody has good days and bad days, but when chronic pain is an issue for a long time, it can be hard to feel, super peppy all the time. So just being compassionate to the people that you work with, and like taking into account that some other things might be going on behind the scenes that you're not really aware of. The one awesome thing, well, besides meeting my husband Paul, that was pretty cool too, is when I moved back to Duluth, I started playing live music. And I play violin and I sing, and I started doing that in like bars, and I started a little band called Gaelynn Lea. That was my first band in Duluth, and that gave me a lot of joy. I mean, I think what you guys do is really cool because it helps bring in another element that maybe people wouldn't have otherwise. And for me, music has been that thing consistently, the thing that kind of, the passion thing that I love to do, and it's just really fun for me. And music kept me grounded a lot of times. Even when I'm dealing with anxiety, music is always something that's fun for me. And so it's been an interesting journey though, because as you probably know, a lot of venues aren't accessible to people in wheelchairs. Stages are almost never accessible. I happen to be small enough where people can lift me onto stages, but if I wasn't, I don't know if I would feel comfortable performing on a stage. I'd be carried up by 4 people, and so that is a barrier, but it's a fixable barrier. It's something that if people are aware of the concept that people want to perform too, just because they have a disability doesn't mean they maybe don't want to become an artist, that we need to work as a society to encourage business owners to build ramps and make sure bathrooms are accessible. All these things that make it harder to get out are fixable problems. So that was the first thing I noticed, is just the inaccessibility in our society right now. It's not 100% yet. It's obviously better than it was 50 years ago, but we still have a long ways to go. And the other thing is that I have a lot of people telling me that I'm inspiring, and it's a double-edged sword, because I definitely think people inspire us. I'm inspired by a lot of people myself, but sometimes you wonder, do they like the music, or do they just feel like inspired? It's a kind of a rocky area where you don't know what they mean when they say they're inspired. And so I've done a lot of thinking about that. And I have compassion for people who say it, even for the reasons that I don't agree with, but we're going to talk about that later, the concept of inspiration, and how to use that term appropriately, and to be respectful of everyone, including yourself and the people that you meet. So that's something we'll talk about later. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to right now. I met Paul around the same time I started playing music. We dated for 7 years, and then we got married, and now we've been married for 2. And our relationship is obviously very much like any marriage relationship, but there is this added issue of disability where he has to help me a lot with things that most people probably don't have to do until they're a lot older, like 85, So we're zooming ahead here. And so he obviously is an awesome person for being able to understand that we are all going to need help at some point. And so even though we're zooming ahead, 8 decades in our relationship perhaps, but because of that, because of his understanding that we all need help at one point or another, it hasn't been a huge part of our relationship, It's just like a matter of fact, and he is very good about understanding it. And the reason that I even mention this at all is that I feel like a lot of times we don't like to admit that we might need help from each other at some point, and we don't like to think about it, and we don't talk about it, and then if it ever happens, it becomes this big, huge deal, like a big emotional deal. And so just to think about the fact that we are all connected, and there's nothing wrong with needing help from each other, from your spouse, from your friends, from your coworkers. It's just part of life. To me, our relationship is also just a little different because a lot of people assume if you have a disability that you marry someone with a disability. And for me, it just seems like I think that the only way to break that stereotype is for people to see different kinds of relationships out there. it's not normal unless you see it, right? And so the more that we integrate people on all levels, including marriage and dating and all sorts of work scenarios and recreation, the more normal it becomes, and it will no longer be an anomaly to see someone with a disability married to someone without one. So I think we're working on it. I mean, I think our society is moving forward, but there's still work to be done there too. The last thing about marriage, I don't know, has anyone heard the term the marriage penalty? Well, when I got married to Paul, I lost my Social Security. And a lot of people don't realize that happens if you get married. And so there are some big governmental issues that we can, again, are fixable with lobbying and legislation changes and stuff where they have the income and asset limits are very low to receive Social Security. And for me, I'm able to keep my health care, but it's only because I'm working. If I ever become unable to work because I'm married to him, I would not even qualify for health care. So the system is kind of broken in that way, and it's something that I just like to mention because a lot of people don't know about it, and they can't advocate for change if they don't know that it needs to happen. And so for me, it just is a matter of raising the income and asset limits to a point where if you have a disability, you don't have to be totally poor your whole life or choose to get a divorce. You know, right now, if I have personal care assistance, and so the only program that pays for that is government health care. No private insurers will pay for that. So if I become unable to work in order to keep that service, we would have to divorce. And I think that that's really messed up. And so it's just good to know, for you guys to know about it. So if you hear about it, you can educate others. You can do your own advocacy work. I think that the information needs to be spread. The next thing I was going to talk about a little bit is just my employment history, because that's another big part of disability. Again, most of the barriers I faced have not been because of my body. They've been because of the way society is structured. And so I've had a lot of discrimination in interviews. I even had some guy say, now that I've seen you, I don't think you can do this job, which is totally illegal, like 100% illegal. So, but that happens still, and we're in 2016, and so it's really important to know that that stuff is still happening, because if you think it's not, unfortunately, that's not the truth. So a lot of times I had trouble getting promoted to higher than like entry-level jobs. So eventually, or I personally, and again, everybody's different, but I personally do not handle 40 hours a week very well, because it takes me a long time to do personal care stuff, and by the end of a 40-hour week with no flexible scheduling, you know, I just got burned out. Like I had extra doctor appointments, I go to counseling, there's other stuff, I play shows. I mean, that's probably a big part of it, is I've always been active in music, but it was just too intense for 40 hours a week, and everybody's going to be different. It doesn't mean somebody's a go-getter and somebody's lazy. It means that everybody has an internal energy level, and sometimes disability takes more of it from you off the top. So for me, I feel like I also had trouble advancing because I didn't really want to do 40 hours a week, but there wasn't a lot out there for part-time that paid more than like $8 an hour. So eventually what I ended up doing was becoming self-employed. And at first I thought, oh, this must be unusual, but I researched it, and people with disabilities are twice as likely to become self-employed, probably because it is so hard to make it work in the traditional framework. And so I love being self-employed. That's probably the first time I felt the most empowered and like satisfied with my career. So I teach fiddle lessons, and I do this kind of public speaking, and I also perform. And now with the tiny desk, I think I'm going to be performing more, which is pretty exciting for me. But nonetheless, I have the flexibility to schedule it the way that I need to. And so that helps a lot with the disability in general. It's just having flexibility for me. Again, a career in music is not a very logical thing that you might assume for someone like me, but that's why I'm just so grateful that I wasn't discouraged, because it turned out to be the perfect thing for me. So I'm hoping to tour in the next year or so. I mean, we are going on these tiny desk shows, but then I'd like to continue doing that, partly as a way to raise awareness that people, as long as they have the proper supports, can do anything they want to do. And so I want to do some spreading of my message about disabilities, but it will require a personal care assistant or a travel companion to go with me. Sometimes that might be my husband, but sometimes it might be someone I hire, and so it's nice to know that at least at this point I have that option to pursue my passion because of the way that the healthcare system is set up. I just kind of want to leave you with 3 different thoughts about disability to kind of think about, and I know you guys work with a wide range of people, and so everybody's experience is going to be different, but these are some important things to think about as you're interacting. The first is this concept of disability pride. Has anyone heard of disability pride? Okay, a few people have. Now, it's not super well known outside of the disability circle, so that's why I wanted to clue you guys in, because I think it's pretty powerful. Basically, disability pride is having a sense of pride about your disability and realizing that a disability is a part of a natural human condition, that all of us will be disabled at one point in our lives, even if it's temporary, and that it's not an unnatural thing. The second part of it is that disability actually provides the world with a unique and valuable perspective. So it's actually it can be a positive thing for the rest of society to hear the story of disability, and that's why you don't have to be ashamed of it, because you're providing a valuable perspective. And so to me, my disability is not negative. It's really, truly part of who I am, and I do not think I would be where I am today without it. And in a positive way, it has impacted me. And so I'm proud of my accomplishments. I love my life. I'm happy with my relationships. And so personally, the disability is a big part of where I am now. So I think it also provides me the view that inclusion is really important. Now, inclusion is more than about just disabilities. It's about people of different ethnicities, different economic backgrounds, women, all sorts of areas where we don't do the best as America yet at including everybody and making sure that everyone has access and similar treatment. And so I think having a disability really brings that home, because you're left out a lot. And so to demand inclusion for yourself hopefully gives you the broader perspective that it's not just important for me, it's important for everybody. So the other thing is, I do believe, as I've kind of said, that many times it's society that provides the barriers, not my actual body. And so what I like to, I'm going to go back to that piece on inspiration, right? Inspiration is not bad. You should be inspired by things. That's what keeps us moving forward. But I personally don't wish to inspire people just based on my existence. I want people to be inspired to take action in their own lives, to do something positive in society, to make society a more inclusive place, to make it a more welcoming place to different people. I think that that's what I want the legacy of inspiration to be about. When I think about how people, and I know this is kind of a weird thing to talk about in this kind of a scenario, but like when people come up and say, "You really inspired me," I think I don't mind it if people are talking about something that they would come up to anyone and say, like, "That was really inspiring, like I really liked that song you wrote," or like, "I'm really glad that you spoke to me today at our conference." That's a real thing that you would go up and say to anyone. But I actually had a lady say, "Did you put that hair clip in yourself?" And I said, "Yeah." And she's like, "You're so inspiring to me." And I was like, "What? Like, it's a hair clip." I do not know. I do not understand. And my brain exploded, and then that was sort of the scenario. So just like think about what, inspiration is for all of us. We all need inspiration. But if you are going to actually go up to someone and say that they inspire you, make sure that it's for a real thing, that they would be proud of themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because disability is not something I think about every minute of my day. I'm just living in the body that I have, much like you. If you're tall, your perspective is up here, and if you're short, your perspective is down here. The disability is not something that's always on my mind. So to be called inspiring for things that I do not believe warrant that's when it becomes frustrating. But I also have compassion. Like, I know it's in the last 100 years, right, that people have ever even seen people with disabilities out in society. So we've come a long way. But that's just something to keep in mind, because you guys have direct contact with people with disabilities, to just understand what that means when you say inspiring, to just think about when you use that word. what you're meaning. You know what I mean? And then the other thing is that disability etiquette. I just want to kind of run over a couple of basic things for you so that when you're working out in the field, you just know, like, this is Gaelynn approved, meaning not everybody will agree with me. Once again, there is a wide variety of opinions, but like, just to make sure your language is correct. Basically, there's a big thing about person first language. Has anyone ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and I hope you have, because that's a pretty standard one, but just a reminder is that it's basically saying you talk about the person. You don't say disabled person. You say a person with a disability. You don't say a wheelchair-bound person. You say a person that uses a wheelchair. My least favorite is people who say she suffers from osteogenesis imperfecta. I don't feel like I suffer from my disability, so that word has a very negative connotation. So when you use words around disability, think about, is that as neutral of a way I can say that? Because it really should be neutral. I don't necessarily care if people say differently abled. I mean, disabled, I don't know. I mean, everybody's different. There's people that are going to have even stronger opinions on this than me, but certainly leave out negative language when you talk about disability, because that seeps into your consciousness and it's just not a necessary thing. And then I don't like, being told that I'm confined to a wheelchair, because to me, without my wheelchair, I would be confined to like a spot on the floor. So to me, I love my wheelchair, and I don't really want people to think of it as a confining thing, because to me, it's my freedom. And so that's another phrase that I think could be obliterated from the English language, and I would be very happy. A victim of a stroke. Like, I understand that that's a commonly used phrase, but someone who had a stroke is a much more neutral way to say it, and they don't want to feel like victims for the rest of their life, and we don't need to use language that promotes that idea. And so the other thing, the biggest thing for me for disability advocate is when people talk to Paul instead of me. You guys obviously aren't doing that here, but it happens a lot where somebody will say, can she do this? Would she like a lunch? And it's like, well, you could ask me too, And so that's a pretty common one, but I think we can work on getting rid of it. And then even with people with cognitive disabilities, when people, or older people with dementia, just making sure that you're not talking to them like little kids, because they are adults and they've had a lot of experiences that every person has growing up and in adulthood, and it might not look exactly like yours, but they're not little kids. And so just speaking to them as adult-like as possible. Obviously, you might not use the same exact words that you would use with everyone, but the tone of voice is really important. So those are the biggest thing. To me, I feel like people are generally very good. Like, people really want to help. They're not out there to make you feel bad. Most people are very, well-meaning. And so when people do things for me, like hold the door without asking, I don't get upset about that. But I know there are people who do with disabilities, so the goal would be not to assume that people need help. It's more polite to just ask, would you like me to get the door for you? Do you want me to move this chair? That kind of thing. That's a little bit more respectful way to go about it. I usually don't personally get offended because I know people just want to be helpful, but I know that there are others that don't feel that way. So it's important to know. And then when in doubt, what is the appropriate response, or what should I do in this situation? Just ask the person with a disability. It's okay to ask questions. I mean, obviously censor yourself and would say, would I want someone asking me this question? But if you're comfortable with the level of intimacy or privacy of the question and it feels appropriate, go ahead and just ask, because the more knowledge we have, the less ignorance we have, and the more we can include people, because we'll be doing it in the right way. That's the way to overcome stereotypes, is just learning more, right? And so asking questions is never bad, in my opinion. And I think most people would agree with that, I hope. I think spreading knowledge is a big part of why we're all here, right? So ask questions. And then, trying to think, the last thing I want to talk about is this concept I have of enrichment versus progress. And it's helped me a lot to think about people with varying levels of disabilities, especially the most severe, where you might not be able to converse with them or they might not remember what you're talking about. I'm going to go back to this concept of enrichment. For me, I used to be, and I still am, I'm a self-help junkie. Like, I read a lot of self-help books. I read a lot of books on spirituality. That's like basically all I read. So I love the idea of progress and always trying to become a better version of yourself. For me, that's been a very motivating idea, and it's helped me get through a lot of things in my life. However, I don't think a theory should be called a theory unless it applies to everyone, and not everyone progresses in the same sense. I think the first time that this kind of hit home with me is when my grandpa was in hospice, and everyone knew he was going to pass away within a matter of days, and you kind of think about it, well, my grandpa's still valuable, but he's not going to progress, like, he's not going to be here very much longer. How do I look at people truly through a lens that applies to everyone, and how do I interact with them in a way that hopefully applies to everyone, so that I don't have to reserve this kind of motivational speech for this group and this one for this group, because I think we're all just people, right? And so we all matter. So to me, it kind of dawned on me that there is a concept of enrichment, which enriching means an act of making something richer through increasing a desirable quality or experience. And so everybody's life, no matter where they are at, can be enriched. Now, sometimes it's going to be active enrichment, which is what I call it, which is like you go and take a class, you read a book, you do a new diet that helps you to live healthier, you explore a new hobby that you think would be fun for you. You're the captain of the ship. You're enriching your own life. But then there's this other kind of enrichment called passive enrichment, which means that you are the recipient of actions that are making your life more enriching. In some cases, it might be the people that you take fishing are benefiting from your actions of taking them out. It might be someone in hospice is just benefiting from the presence of someone sitting with them. Their experience of dying is going to be a lot different if they're alone or with people that care about them, right? And so passive enrichment is just bringing this kind of quality to their life. And so I think that everybody can experience it. I mean, they have a study out with Alzheimer's patients that even if it's in really advanced people with Alzheimer's, where they don't remember like half an hour ago what happened, if they have a pleasant experience, an interaction with a person that's pleasant and it involves something that they used to enjoy doing, even if they can't remember that it happened, like you come and visit with them and you play some music with them and they sing with you, right? And then you leave and they can't even remember you were there. Statistically though, they're happier for like an hour afterwards, even if they can't tell you why. And then there's another story of a guy named Martin Pistorius. He was 12, he got, I think it was meningitis or something, and he went in a coma for like many years, like 10 years. And for the first 2 years he doesn't remember, but then he woke up, but nobody knew he was awake. And he said what really was the hardest for him was that people talked about him like he wasn't there. And so he could hear what was going on for 10 years. And then finally, one of his nurses realized that she was pretty sure he knew what was going on. And because of the way we have technology now, he's able to speak through a typing, I don't know, I think it's eye control. He can communicate now. And he actually wrote a book about the experience called Ghost Boy. And it's really powerful because it makes you think about, we assume some people can't hear us. We assume a lot of people don't understand what we're saying, but I think we have to question that concept of people not understanding us, because a tone of voice, that can be really powerful. A tender touch rather than a harsh one. A nice meal instead of a thrown together one. Those things actually probably matter more than we realize. And that's the kind of thing that passive enrichment can really benefit someone. So the way you talk to the people out on the boat, or even on the phone, you're at your day job, somebody calls, can you make their life more enriching, or can you actually harm someone by the tone of your voice? It's pretty important to think about the way our interactions affect each other. And the other thing I like to try to remember is that we might all at one point be the beneficiaries of passive care. There's a good chance that a lot of us in this room won't always be as independent as we are now, and just having the same compassion for other people that we hope to receive ourselves someday is a pretty powerful motivator, I think, to treat others as we want to be treated. I like to think of enrichment as bringing more to the table than the bare minimum out of compassion for others and ourselves. So when you're actively enriching your life, you're making the choices to enrich yourself. When you're passively enriching others, you're bringing your full self to the care of that person. So you're being really present with them when you're out in the boat and you're talking, and you're just making sure that anything you can do to enrich someone else's life is valuable in this moment. I think that when enrichment is the goal of life, it becomes a lot less about competition and the pressure to succeed. It can be more about caring for yourself in the moment and caring for others in the moment. And then just remember that enrichment goes both ways. You know, I can be the teacher, but I can also be taught by anyone. I mean, it doesn't have to be someone with more degrees than me. It can be anyone. A little kid can teach me a pretty important lesson, right? And we can also give comfort, but we can also receive comfort. And so just remember that enrichment goes both ways. And it provides us with motivation for the future, I think, because it reminds us that we can enrich ourselves and others at any time of our lives, every day. So that's kind of the thought I want to leave you with. And then I was going to play, if anyone has any questions first, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll play you a couple songs. Any questions?
Okay. Did you get a degree?
I do. I have a degree in psychology, and well, no, that's a lie. I have a degree. I have a degree in political science and a minor in psychology. So I went to UMD, and that's where I finished in 2008 when I moved back up to Duluth. I switched over to UMD. So, yeah. I don't know why I told you the wrong degree. That's interesting. Anyone have any other questions? Okay. Well, I think I'll do some music now, and then you guys can continue on your meetings. Thank you for having me, though. I really appreciate it, and I hope some of this was helpful. When the smoke clears, when the dust settles, where do you go? Who do you know? When the damage is done and it puts out the sun, to whom do you run? To whom do you run? Let yourself let it go. The urge to have, the need to know. Stay away. time for one more song? Okay, sweet. This is a little more cheerful. Because, it's a little downer. I don't know, I'm not actually that depressing of a person, but my songs are all depressing, and I don't know why. Okay, so this is called Bird Song, and I'm going to teach you something. So there's a part in here that goes, bird, why do you sing? Fate has clipped your wings. That's all it is. You sing it twice. Can you guys try it with me? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Bird, why do you sing? Fate has clipped your wings. And then you do it again. Bird, why do you sing? Fate has clipped your wings. So there's a point in the song where I'm going to need you to sing that with me. And then I'm going to sing something else, and you got to keep doing it. I think you can do this. I know you're outdoors people, not music people necessarily, but I think you can handle it. So I'm going to sing, and then when I'm ready for you, I'll point, okay? See if we can make this, pull this off. I think we can. Usually it works out. So, 1, 2, 3. obviously till tomorrow. So thank you so much for everything. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.